excited to share with you all. Again, my name is Patrick. I'm on the marketing team here at Hasbro, and I'm joined by three amazing guests. I'm a fan myself, so just kind of tingling, so excited to be on virtually with them. I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we will dive into things because we've got a lot to talk about with all of them.
I guess I'll start since it looks like I'm up in the corner. D. Bradley Baker here. I voice the Clone Army as well as the Bad Batch.
I guess I'm next. Hi, I'm Michelle Ang. I am the voice of Omega in The Bad Batch, and thanks Hasbro and Patrick for having me. I'm dialing in from New Zealand.
My name's Simon Cassianides. I play Axe Woves in The Mandalorian. It's just such a pleasure to be here and to meet you guys.
Star Wars is obviously a global phenomenon, and so it's very fitting here. I'm, certainly in Rhode Island on East Coast time. Dee's on West Coast time, I believe. Is that right, Dee? You're Pacific time, right?
No, I'm in Mountain time. I'm in Colorado right now.
That's fantastic. So I thought one time zone, you're the other. Michelle's in New Zealand. Simon, I believe, is recording this somewhere in Europe, right? I think either Greece or Scandinavia.
Yes, currently in Greece for the next couple of days, yes.
That's awesome. So yes, truly fitting for the global nature of Star Wars. And would love to hear, obviously we've got some product to show, but would just love to hear, obviously I'm sure you've traveled, all three of you, all around the world. Michelle, obviously you're in New Zealand, Simon, you're in Europe. Would just love to hear kind of what we know that fans here in the US are passionate. And I've been to some conventions and other around the world. Would love to just hear kind of what experience you've had with fans outside the US, in New Zealand, in Greece. Dee, I'm sure you've traveled as well. What kind of has been the global reaction from fans to the fact that you guys are Star Wars celebrities?
Yeah, I feel like I'm very new to the family. I actually only did my very, very first convention, which was Celebration earlier this year, which was on American soil and the stronghold of the sort of Star Wars family. So I was absolutely blown away by just how many people traveled into Anaheim, California for that. And I'm looking forward to engaging with some of the other international fan bases, but actually to date, I haven't really gotten to meet that. We haven't traveled that much because I've only started my journey in the family since the pandemic, really.
I haven't had the pleasure to see the international affection that so many have for Star Wars. I've just seen it full force here on American soil, as Michelle says. Yeah. And it's really warm and fun and overwhelming to experience that firsthand. I am hopeful that I would make it out to Celebration, which I guess is I think it's in the UK this upcoming year in 2023. And I'd love to see the international flavor. I've heard the Germans have some really remarkable cosplay for the stormtroopers and other characters, which I'd love to see.
I had the great pleasure of doing my very first Comic-Con in London in July, which was the first time that I actually got to meet the world of the Star Wars fan base. Yeah. And there was a panel actually with myself and Katie Sackhoff. And I just couldn't believe the scale and the warmth and the age range. And then there was a fan group of Mandalorians dressed in all individually made. The cosplay was insane. And they came and they presented me with a plaque. And I was overwhelmed. I mean, you think you understand the scale, but then when you come face to face with it, it just blows your mind. I mean, it's just so humbling. This whole process is just, it's incredible. I love Star Wars.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And certainly, this broadcast is going out to fans around the world, certainly in the US, in Canada, in Europe. So that international fan base is tuning in and excited to hear everything you guys have to say. I would love to geek out, but we've got some questions, we've got some toys, so we'll dive into it. I think we're going to start with Michelle and Omega, and so I think first we'll have a clip of Omega from The Bad Batch, which we'll all watch and love, and then we'll dive into things. So we can roll that clip. Yeah, she is such an inspirational figure. I love seeing her in action. Michelle, I think you have with you, again, in New Zealand, through the magic of the mail service. Yes, a wonderful cardboard box that has, I believe, a black... Yeah, would love. Do you want to open that up and show the world the Black Series Omega figure?
Yes, I'm so excited to actually to see this. I did sign a few at Celebration earlier this year, but they were obviously like kept carefully within their box. I'm really excited to actually be able to touch this figure. Should I just go ahead and open it?
Yeah, absolutely. Rip it open, or if you're, there we go. You are a true fan. You've got the knife to carefully slice it open and keep the packaging.
I know. I'm not ripping open this. There's no way. Keep it pristine.
Awesome.
Okay.
Fantastic.
It's pretty amazing. There's like this beautiful artwork, like some awesome pencil artwork of her on the side there, and then, ooh. It's so cool. It's so, honestly, wow, it's so cool. There's a figurine, I can see she's got like movable joints, and there's some extra little props or like sorry, I'm trying to keep this up. Yeah. Oh, she's limber. Wow. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So all of her limbs move, and then there is the little gas mask from the episode where she and Hunter find that autoimmune dragon. Does it fit? Let's see. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yes. Wow. Okay, and then this has become like an ASMR video.
Yeah. Nice job.
We have Ruby here from Roland Duran's pet, who Omega forms a bond with.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
She looks bigger. I don't know if this is to scale. I imagine she was a bit smaller in real life, but
oh wow,
she's still very cute.
Yeah.
And then of course the beautiful energy bow that was featured in the clip. Oh wow, this is so cool! Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it sounds like this is your first time seeing the figure, which is great. Although it sounds like you saw some of them at Celebration, but maybe getting to open it up. What's your reaction to seeing this character? You voiced this character, I'm sure so personal to you. What's your reaction to seeing this character you voice in toy form?
It's sort of like what Simon was saying. It's unbelievable. Like, you know, as a voice actor, you sort of you immerse yourself in your own imaginary world, because we're so early in the start of the process. You know, often we're not even looking at visuals. So it's really just Dee and I through some online connection with our director and writing team. So you kind of create this fictional world in your mind, and sometimes I forget that actually there's, you know, then we share this world with the global Star Wars family, and now to have it sort of immortalized in an actual physical thing that I can touch is it feels wild, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. All of the detail, it makes it feel real, like we're not playing pretend, like our world actually sort of exists.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And Eric is our Black Series designer. This is our Black Series line, highly articulated, super deco. He's back in the studio, back where we tossed from. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear that. Would love to also just hear, you know, what are some of your favorite memories from Bad Batch Season 1 that seeing this toy evokes? Like, you know, now that you have this, what scenes would you love to see this toy kind of recreating from the show?
I mean, well, first of all, like Omega finding the Zygerian energy bow in the episode where, you know, the Bad Batch are on a mission to bring back Moochie. I just, you know, it was always interesting that she, as a young figure of the Bad Batch, didn't really have any, you know, artillery or any way to help the Batch, and so it was really cool when she sort of gravitated towards this energy bow. And then in the next episode, there's that wonderful scene with Echo teaching her in Sid's parlor, and she's so bad at it in the beginning, and she gets really frustrated. And I love that scene where sort of Echo is teaching her about focus and about shutting out, you know, distractions, and you sort of get a glimpse of the growth path that Omega is on with her brothers, and how she has so much to learn but so much potential. So that definitely evokes
That's awesome.
that little scene for me. And then also, obviously, all of the fun characters that Omega falls in love with, in season 1. I think she's quite an empath. Despite the gruffness of the Rancor, or the sort of prickliness or the oddness of all of our universe monsters, so to speak, I think she always seems to find a way to empathize and create a connection with them, which often proves to be helpful in some of their stickier situations. And then actually this mask reminds me, Hunter and Omega have a really special bond, and that episode was really early in the series where Omega takes sort of initiative when she loses Hunter for a moment, and takes his blaster and tries to prove herself and prove her worth to the batch by finding the capacitor for their ship. And I think it's quite nostalgic to think, in the beginning she was really fighting to earn her place within the batch, and I think as the series progresses, it's lovely to see how they accept her, and she sort of accepts her own place within her brother's team.
That's honestly just so touching to hear that. And honestly, I want to go home and rewatch Bad Batch season 1 tonight. You've kind of reminded me why it's so amazing. And I've got 2 young kids, and they're not quite at that age, but I can't wait to share it with them. So that's amazing. Thank you. We're gonna keep moving. We're gonna come back to Michelle. But Simon, Mandalorian season 2, Axe Woves. We've got a clip here again to remind folks about that, and then we'll dive into a figure and some questions for you. So we can roll that clip.
To provide our own sound effects for it.
So that's great. It's funny. Not that anyone needed any reminding. Mandalorian, such a phenomenon. Mandalorian season 2, so epic. But would love to hear, Simon. I've read that your favorite Star Wars toy growing up was the Mandalorian figure of Boba Fett. We've got an image of Boba Fett in our retro line, which obviously you, me, many kids grew up playing with. What was it like for you, growing up, loving kind of that figure, having that be a part of your youth, and when you learned that you would be playing a Mandalorian, not Boba Fett, but a Mandalorian in a show all about Mandalorians, what was that like for you with that kind of connection with your past?
Well, luckily...
Yeah, it's such a beautiful looking show, and it's such an interesting turn that they took with devoting to the story of these guys and the recovery that they find themselves thrown into, the improvisational problem solving that they have to supersize from how they used to play it back before the end of everything, before the Order 66. And it's really gratifying just to see how fans love it and connect into it, and bringing aboard this really interesting character of Omega, and how they establish their relationship with her, and how the story starts to really turn more and more towards what's up with her and why she is of interest.
It's amazing. And you, Dee, I think we chatted about this a couple of years ago. Your characters have had a really interesting through line with our kind of signature Hasbro events. 5 years ago at HasCon, an in-person event, our Star Wars exclusive was a Black Series Captain Rex, and I think we have an image of that. And now, 2 years ago at PulseCon, we chatted with Ashley Eckstein, and we talked about your Mission Fleet Captain Rex, and I think we have an image of that. And now we've got a figure that I think you're going to reveal to the world for the first time. If you want to show that to us, Dee.
Here he comes.
Absolutely.
He's got really beautiful detail on it, lots of articulation. The detail on the face is quite nice, I gotta say. Yeah. He is a force to be reckoned with, even at this size. He's got beautiful little helmet that fits on like that. And he's also got a awesome little backpack. Then it gets even more interesting. He's got weaponry. He's got a little tiny blaster. And then he's also got, if he wants to go old school, he's got a little tiny knife. Tiny little knife. And then he's also got an automatic weapon too. Oh, I found it. Here it is. There it is. If you really want to do some damage, if you got to blast your way out of a tough situation, he's got that as well. So yeah, so he's ready to He's ready for action. And the nice thing is about the size of this is you can take him along with you. Some of the awesome larger figures, they're more for like a display, to inspire you, to set the mood for the room that you're in. But this you can take with you. You can take it to school. You can take it to the Starbucks. You can just kind of have it there in the car, just waiting, just to kind of, maybe we can have a little talk with Wrecker and Hunter and see what's up. So it's nice to have something that's not the largest. I mean, you can get things quite large, quite realistic, but the small, tiny ones too is nice to have along as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is the vintage line. So we talked about Black Series. This is vintage. It's our 3 3/4 inch line. So the scale of those figures Simon was talking about playing with his youth, that I did as well. I'm sure lots of folks out there have. So this is the world reveal of our vintage collection Hunter. Excited for you to be sharing it, Dee. So obviously, we talked about the Black Series Rex, the Mission Fleet Rex, now Vintage Hunter. Since you voice so many clones in the Clone Wars and now Bad Batch, your characters that you voice are immortalized with many different characters in many different forms. How do you approach such different characters? Obviously, it must be challenging, right? Because it's not just different characters. They're all clones of Jango Fett. So they're all similar, but obviously they have such different characterizations. How do you approach those different characters?
Yeah, well, fortunately, it starts with the scripts, which are very good. You can't really have a good show without good writing, and the writing on these is very clear. It's an interesting story. The characters have arcs that play out that are very individual and interesting, and that's where you start when creating a character that you want to feel different from the rest of the characters, which is really the key, especially with the clones. The Bad Batch is a little easier because they're a little more distinct from each other than the regular clone. But and I've said this before, is when I look at these characters, it's gratifying to feel that I'm a part of it in creating the voice and the vocal performance and the acting that underlies what is really a collaboration of so many people, from the writers, the director, and the entire team of these brilliant artist technicians that bring these characters to life, that breathe them into the amazing world that draws you in and connects you in. So it always, I have to approach it with some humility. I will give myself some credit for being an important part of this, but it really feels like I'm in there with the team of the people who create these, of the hundreds of people that bring this thing to full cinematic existence, that brings such enthusiasm and connection for so many years. That's paying off in such amazing ways these days, in not just what we can see and what we can stream, but also what we can carry along in our pocket with us, or put up on the shelf. I mean, it's an amazing time to be a fan of Star Wars, which I was when I was a kid. I've got I showed this before. This is me when I was 13 years old. My mom and dad made me a Jawa costume.
That's amazing.
So I'm an old Star Wars fan. I've always loved it, and it connected me not just into Star Wars, but also John Williams. The soundtracks really connected me into music and programmatic music, as you call it, and it just brings such a full plate of awesomeness that you can carry with you through your life, and to connect you not just with the show, but with your family, with your friends, with the other fans that you encounter. If you can make the journey to Celebration, which I hope everybody can. So it's an amazing thing to be a part of, and uniquely so for me, just because I've loved it for so very long.
That's amazing to hear, and it was just such a beautiful way to put it, kind of all the people involved. And it's true, like, obviously this all came from George Lucas and, Bad Batch, Dave Filoni, and, Mandalorian, Jon Favreau, both of them together. But to your point, it is such a huge community, and we were talking about this earlier, the fandom is so large, and there's very few things in today's world that connect so many people, and it must be beautiful being a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky to be on a lot of really awesome shows that are great fun to be a part of. But it's unique to be involved in an awesome show that has its own convention.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's special.
Yeah,
That's kind of a
absolutely.
whole different level of expanse and awesomeness. It's very unique. It's really wonderful.
Awesome. I will just say, if you still have that Jawa costume, we have got a cosplay contest when we go to San Diego Comic-Con. So maybe next year, dig that out of the attic and give that to someone who can fit into it. But that was great.
I'm not sure if it would fit. I'd be a tall Jawa, but not that tall.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would do better to do cosplay as a Jawa than I would as a clone. I've had people occasionally ask me, "Are you gonna cosplay as a clone?" And I always say, I'd look less like a clone in clone armor than I do just walking around.
Yeah.
No, I am not going to cosplay as a clone.
That's great.
Maybe a Jawa.
Yep. You've seen yourself in two different of our expressions. Obviously, the vintage item that you're holding there, Vintage Hunter, that looks, like the toys of our youth. It's that 3 3/4 inch scale. You mentioned the larger figures, our Black Series line, which we've done a Black Series Hunter. I think we have an image of that as well. That's that 6-inch scale, and you mentioned it's the larger figures, kind of more modern, has those details. What's it like seeing, a character that you voice in two different toy forms?
The thing about these characters is you want to know them, you want to see them, you want to bring them into your life, and that's what these wonderful figures enable you to do. Whether you're on, walking around or living out your life outside, or if you're setting up, a room of awesome displays. It enables you to kind of surround yourself with these characters, because I really think that's what it gets down to is these characters are so beautifully realized by all the people that come together to make them, that people want to meet them, they want to know them, they want to have them around them, they want to know these people as friends and colleagues and to live in this world. And so to have these figures, it's not a small thing, I don't think. I don't think it's a small thing at all. I think it's an expression of what people want to have in their lives and how they want to feel about the world that they live in and that the people that they surround themselves with. They're like friends that you choose to have around, in a way, is how it feels. And it's just, I wish I could go back in time and show this stuff to 13-year-old me to say, now you can buy a T-shirt, but later it's going to be a lot different and way better than this. I'm very envious of the fans right now, who I count myself among them, who get to experience this in such a full way.
Would love to hear, are you guys collectors of anything, whether it's Star Wars related, toy related, or something completely different? But just kind of, what do you collect in your own lives?
It's odd. I'm not sure if it's directly linked to what Dee was saying, but since I've been involved with the Star Wars world, all of a sudden there are these figures turning up around the home that my partner is saying we may need a separate room for. So,
I could probably be said to collect Halloween masks, because I'm very big on Halloween with my creepyyard.com Halloween yard creation site. That's sort of my little hobby. And then I collect books. I like having books in my little library that I haven't read. I think for a lot of people, a library is sort of a graveyard of books that you've read, and they just kind of sit there. And I like having all of these books that I haven't read, that I want to read. They're like these friends that I haven't met that are like calling to me as I walk past the library or the stack of books, in the front. And so I like to be surrounded by books that draw my curiosity. That I like as well.
Dee and Michelle, so obviously we saw Hunter. He's the first of our Bad Batch in our vintage collection line. Who do you think from the Bad Batch should come next? Michelle, who does Hunter need most by his side?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I mean, I kind of think that he needs his quote-unquote ally / nemesis. Like Crosshair feels like the
Oh,
next
wow.
sort of strongest choice. What do you think, Dee? Someone for Hunter to like butt heads with, but ultimately, it's a very complicated, relationship
Yes.
based on love. I think Crosshair would be the natural.
Crosshair can wait
That's
from the
awesome.
top of the mountain while Hunter does his work. And I want to play too. I don't want to be left behind either. Come on. I'll be fine
But
back
no,
in
I
the
was
ship.
going to say we need Wrecker so that, like, Wrecker and Omega's friendship is pretty, Crosshair or Wrecker.
Interesting. It is amazing seeing like all of those voices come out of your mouth, Dee. Like intellectually, I know that you voiced them all, but seeing them come out one after the other is just amazing.
It's a weird spectacle, but ultimately, I mean, I would have been happy if nobody knew that I voiced any of them, and you just think of them as different people, because that's really all I want. I don't want people to think of me when they watch the Bad Batch. Actually, I just want them to think of the characters. That's it.
That's great.
And I was going to say, like, when we do recordings, obviously because it's not live, we have the option to sort of like drill down on one character or one part of the scene, but Dee mostly always chooses to just flow through, even when he's switching between multiple characters, and listening and watching Dee defend like choices or emotional truths from one personality to the next is absolutely incredible. It's like them like inside out, and all of them are so distinct that you could go to bat for them on a particular line.
They're different people to me, and there's some things they'd say, and there's some words they wouldn't say, and each is very different. And that's the fun of the acting, of any acting really, is to clearly see your character, and then, as you're saying, Michelle, to defend it, because our job is not just to read words and do what we are told, actually. That's part of it. But also we have to create something and make something, and then dig in your heels and make sure that everything makes sense and works and is appropriate for this thing that we have made. And that's an important part of what an actor brings, is the pushback of what we create. That's part of the power of what we bring when we're hired. So it's a lot of people just think that all you do, and it's easier, I think, maybe to think of a voice actor as that, is you just read words and do what you're told. And I've come to see that that's not the case. That's only the beginning of it, that you've really got to make your choices and defend them and maybe negotiate them. And sometimes you got to take the line read. Sometimes you just got to do what you're told, certainly. But you've got to defend those characters and keep them specific and make their work, make what their emotions are and their expression is. It's gotta hit right.
So obviously the version of Hunter that we showed, the vintage version, again, that's our vintage line. It's in throwback packaging to the 70s and 80s. We have an image of another example of our vintage Captain Rex. Do you guys have any memories or associations with those classic Star Wars Kenner toys of the 1970s and 1980s?
It's interesting to look at the characters and to see not just the growth of sophistication, but also as the armor changes, for instance, as it evolves, that it's not just the armor that's evolving, but the character and the point in the storyline is also evolving. And so when you buy something or possess part of the character with different outfits or different proportions or different painting or decorations or whatever, is that you're buying into not just that character, but how that character is changing and how the story is playing out, because that it's not static. It's an ever-changing, growing, expanding story that you're connecting into. I mean, it's really cool to see that. It's like, oh, it used to look very simple or just very basic, and then it starts to evolve. Just like if you watch through the Clone Wars, for instance, great stories all the way through that gets better and better, but it also gets more and more sophisticated, and the armor starts to change, and the way that they kind of mod their hair or they or they tattoo, or they kind of dress themselves, that also starts to change and evolve with the increasing sophistication of the technology and the artistry that they're able to apply to the storytelling. So it's very interesting.
So Michelle, you mentioned this with your Omega, and sorry, I'll just say, so is it Omega or Omega? Because I will say, I always thought it was Omega. When Michelle, you mentioned Omega, I didn't want to say it wrong because that's the kiss of death in the Star Wars world. So I said Omega. I heard Dee say Omega. Can we resolve once and for all? Is it Omega or Omega?
However she says it is how you better say it.
I mean, this was something that sort of came up early. I think, with my native New Zealand accent, the E's read differently. I refer to myself as Omega.
Absolutely.
I think I've seen some pretty amazing fan T-shirts that have been designed where all of the Bad Batch names are spelt out phonetically in my Kiwi accent, which is
that's fantastic.
Cause for hilarity. But for the most part, I feel like the rest of the characters we've encountered in the universe call her Omega.
Interesting.
But I say Omega.
There we go. Well, I think we've resolved it here. From now on, it's Omega. I at least will always refer to it as Omega. So that's good to know. But for Omega, you saw the packaging. You noticed the art on the side. The team, Marie's, our Black Series designer, did an amazing job with your character's likeness. Omega in that illustration is clearly, she's resolute. She's ready for action. What do you think she's thinking in that moment with that expression?
I mean, I have to say, she has a maturity about her in this picture that, when we first meet Omega in season 1, she's very naive. I mean, there's that wonder. She's never touched dirt before. She's never left Camino. I feel like this illustration of her is more towards, more towards the end of her season 1 journey. I think she's seen some things that have, affected her and sort of made her grow up a little bit. I feel like with Tapoka City and just sort of witnessing the collapse of her home as she knew it, I feel like this expression on the Black Series is sort of, she's made her home with her family, but what the future holds is unknown. I think it's kind of how I see that. She seems, she's sort of like, okay, my home has been destroyed, but my home now resides with my brothers, the Bad Batch. That's how I read that expression.
That's great. That's
she's
awesome.
She's resolute and serious.
I will just also say, so many questions, and you don't even have to react to it. We won't talk about, but the next seasons of Mandalorian and Bad Batch, I'm so excited for. I'm sure people watching this are having so many questions, and we won't touch on it, but because I know you can't say anything. But there's just a lot of excitement out there for both of these properties. And that just sparks more excitement.
I'm just saying that trailer for season 3.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how you guys reacted, but I went. I think it just was incredible. I mean, the reaction online, and just as a fan myself, even though I was in season 2, just seeing what's coming is just again so cool.
Totally agree. Obviously, ever since seeing Boba Fett, however many, 40 plus years ago, right? The promise of Mandalorians, and that's definitely come through in Mando season 1 and 2 and Book of Boba Fett. But yeah, that is fulfilling the promise of just the impact and the majesty of Mandalorian. So yeah, it's going to be amazing when that airs. Awesome. Cool. I think we've got a couple more questions. I don't want it to end, but Dee and Michelle, did you guys meet in person before starting recording, or was it after? What was your first meeting like in person, knowing that obviously you voice characters in animation?
Dee and I, obviously, we did Celebration this year together, and it felt like we were hanging out just like old times. But when we really sat down and thought about it, it was only the second time we had actually in person spent time together. We see each other, a couple of times a month through Zoom or through some sort of online videoing thing. But in terms of actually physically hanging out, Dee, we met maybe in person for the very first episode in LA in the studio, right?
Yeah, it was either first or second episode, I think, and then that stopped with coronavirus. And thankfully, I mean, it's like so many other shows, the production did not stop, and they found very quickly how to keep it going.
Yeah.
And it's still fantastic. I think the fans they're very much looking forward to seeing our new season. Celebration back in May of 2022. That's the most we've seen each other or spent time. Otherwise, we're just Zooming in sessions and recordings online.
But I have to say the chemistry is great. Like, as you can tell, Dee is a real wonderful personality, and the smoothness that we do have, this sort of new technological way of connecting, is great. And for the most part, our time zones aren't too complicated, so we often get to record an episode at the same time, which is where we get the best chemistry.
Very much so. That's the best. Yeah.
That's great. Awesome. And last question I have, Michelle, which of the clones is Dee most like? Either from the Bad Batch, elsewhere. Which of the clones is he most like?
Ooh, this is okay. Which of the clones is he most like? Well, I'm going to have to cheat because I feel like it's really an amalgamation. Like, I think it's pretty apparent that Dee has this wonderful, optimistic, childlike sense of humor. So there's a strong Wrecker element, I think, to Dee. But he also, I mean, come on, Dee. Dee's always the first to crack a joke. But I think that you've got like the heart of Hunter, but you're nowhere near as broody as Hunter. I don't think you don't really wear that energy. But Dee has been an incredible mentor and friend to me, as this is my first voice acting role. I'm more of a live action actor, and he has just been such an incredibly generous friend and mentor, and leading me through this massive experience. And in that sense, I feel like he's very much like Hunter, or maybe Echo, because Echo is a little less reticent about being a parental figure. And then we always have this funny saying that tech is easy breezy, and I think there's an element of Dee that's nothing's ever a problem for you, Dee. I feel like you've got tech's easy breezy, sometimes quite dry humor, like assessing a situation and just dropping a humorous little one-liner that lands with great insight and
that's funny.
clarity.
That's fascinating to be psychologically unpacked like that.
Oh, sorry.
To apply it to the show. No, I love it. I appreciate it. I would only aspire to be anywhere near one of these warriors.
That's awesome. So there's a little bit of Dee in all of them, although she didn't say crosshair, which was good.
He's in there too, I'm afraid to say, but you gotta keep him, at a distance.
Arm's length, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was just a real pleasure. This is definitely a top 2 moment in my life, right there with the conversation with Dee and Ashley Eckstein a couple of years ago. But you guys, so talented. Like, obviously, we've touched on this a couple of times, but you bring such joy to people around the world, myself included, and just so kind and gracious to spend the time with us. And I should say as well, if you are, at home, fans, if you're kind of doing the time zone clock here, it is ridiculously early for Michelle and ridiculously late for Simon, and it's right after lunch, for Dee, and as people get sleepy after lunch. But just again, so gracious and kind in giving your time at these crazy times. And yeah, I've had a blast. Thank you so much. This is really a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Patrick.
Great pleasure, Simon. It's great to meet you. I can't wait to see what's coming up.
I hope to meet you all in person in the same time zone soon. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, maybe we'll see you at Celebration UK.
Yes. Let's make that a date.
Let's do it.
And seeing you all there, whoever's watching and whoever's in the room over there watching this, can't wait to meet you all.
Fantastic. We've all got a date at Celebration in London. So everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. Thanks again to Dee and Simon and Michelle.